Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back to another edition of Paisano's Music and Vinyl Talk. I am your host, Paisano. Before we discuss tonight's album, I'd like to issue a correction from last week's Allman Brothers Eat a Peach review. I mistakenly said that Duane Allman had died from a heroin overdose. He did not die from a heroin overdose. He died in a motorcycle accident in Macon, Georgia. In 1971, the bassist Barry Oakley died almost a year to the day that Duane Allman did, just 3 blocks from where Duane died in a motorcycle accident. Major losses. They both gave us a lifetime of music to enjoy. Like I said, Duane's tone was just magic, and Barry Oakley was a fantastic bassist. Okay, that aside, we're going to talk about some British rock, a British trio by the name of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and their 1972 release, Trilogy. Great album. Great album. This kind of music was described as progressive rock. It was described as classical rock because of some of the keyboard work that would take place in a lot of these so-called progressive groups. And Emerson, Lake and Palmer was one of the biggies. Them, Jethro Tull. You had Uriah Heep's, Yes, all big progressive groups of the early 70s. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, as the name would suggest, was a trio. Greg Lake on bass and most vocals. Keith Emerson, keyboardist extraordinaire, classically trained, and very, could play anything, really. Very talented. And Carl Palmer on drums. Fantastic drummer. Operated with a very small kit, and he made magic with it. Together, they were magic. Very talented trio. I believe this was their, was this their third studio album? I believe it was. I think it was their third studio album. Bigger things were yet to come for this group. Their next album, Brain Cell and Surgery, was even a bigger hit than this one. They were still on their way up with this one. Trilogy, I always enjoyed it. I bought this in the mid-'80s. Probably, it was either at Quincy Records in Quincy, Massachusetts, or the Strawberries down the South Shore Plaza in Braintree, Massachusetts. So long ago, I can't remember. But it was a tremendous pickup. Like I said, Greg Lake was in another progressive band before Emerson, Lake and Palmer by the name of King Crimson. And he made 2 albums with them, and he proved that he was an extremely talented bassist and vocalist. Had a tremendous voice. Like I said, this one came out in 1972. Let's go over the track listing. We got the Endless Enigma Part 1, and then the Endless Enigma Part 2 with a piece called Fugue. In the middle of that, little piano interlude with Keith Emerson. From the Beginning, which was the hit off of this album. It might have been the only single released off this album. And it was a biggie, still heard on classic rock stations to this day. Next up is The Sheriff. Nice tune. Hoedown, which was an instrumental. One of my favorite songs in the album is Hoedown. Tremendous instrumental. Trilogy. Living Sin, which I believe was sung by Keith Emerson. And the final song, Abaddon's Bolero, which, in my opinion, could have been left off the album, and it would have been just as good. It's kind of long, kind of repetitive, kind of drawn out. And to me, it really doesn't offer all that much. But I've enjoyed this album for many years. It's a gatefold sleeve. Even in the mid-'80s, they were still issuing the gatefold sleeve. That's the group in their early 70s splendor. Looks probably a British forest. Very psychedelic. It was produced by Greg Lake, and he did a good job. It's a good sounding album, fine sounding album. Let's take a look at the vinyl. This came out on Atlantic. Another big signing for Atlantic. They had these guys, Led Zeppelin. Yep, there it is, the good old Atlantic logo. Yep, this was a solid pickup for me back in the day. Introduced me to a tremendous group, and I went and I bought their first album, just titled Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I actually have that on cassette. I don't have that on vinyl. This is the only Emerson, Lake and Palmer release I have on vinyl. I have Brain Salad Surgery on cassette as well. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you're enjoying our discussions, please like and, more importantly, subscribe. What will Paisano dig up next week? Tune in and find out. Good night, YouTube.